In this video, we're looking at feeding the future. So we're going to talk about plants, agriculture, and aquaculture. Plants need a range of things to help them survive. They need water, air, nutrients, and sunlight. Those are really important things, and you should have written them down by the end of this video, as you'll need to know those concepts. So water, air, nutrients, and sunlight are the essential things that plants need. But where does soil come into all of this? Soil is important to plants because it contains the essential nutrients that they require for growth, sort of like a giant supermarket for plants. Technically, plants don't require soil to grow though. If you provide a plant with all of the nutrients that it requires, it can survive without soil. Some farmers use this method to grow plants, and this is what we call hydroponics. The nutrients the plants require come in liquid or a powder form, and they're placed within the water that the plants are suspended in. The rate of growth for a hydroponic plant can be up to 50% faster than a soil plant under the same conditions. If you have a look at the STEM Plant Growing Challenge, it talks about growing a plant in a Ziploc bag, and you can stick it to your window or some place that has sunlight. So if you're interested, have a look at that. That's a fun little task that you can do, and you can send me or upload some photos of it. What makes up a plant? So there's a bunch of different parts to it. I want you to have a look at these little descriptions and see if you can match up which one goes to which. So pause the video now, have a think about which one fits the best description and what do you think each piece is named. The life cycle of plants. We've got a bit of a process that the plant follows. Firstly, it starts with germination, and germination is when we've got our water, our soil, and the sun. The plant begins to grow. So this is our seed starting to grow. The seed holds a tiny plant with leaves, stem, and root parts plus a food supply. So we've got a food supply in it that the plant grows out of, and the seed is sort of the outer coating that protects it. The leaves unfold, take in the sunlight, and produce food through the photosynthesis process. So they absorb the sun and they generate energy or food for the plant. The stems and roots then push up towards the light. The roots grow down into the soil to harvest more nutrients from the soil and more light from the stems and leaves. Many plants produce flowers that are important in making the seeds that we started with, and then the pollination process is when the stamen from the plant moves into the pistil. The seeds and fruit are then produced. So this pollination is essential for producing fruit and also producing the seeds, and then the process repeats. Then we get the germination of those seeds that fall on the ground or are carried away. They form the leaves, the stems and roots, the flowers, pollinate again, and so on and so forth. So this is the life cycle of the plant. What about uses for plants? If we're talking about plants as a resource, what kind of uses do we have? I want you to have a think about the gum tree, the cotton plant, and the rubber tree. Before I give you the answer, I want you to write down in your book one use for each of these. So have a go at that now. Okay, so if we first start with the gum tree, I wonder if you knew that we actually use the gum tree for making toilet paper. So in Australia, even in South Australia, we have a large manufacturing plant that produces our own toilet paper, and we use this from gum trees. The cotton plant is used for making clothes. Socks in particular are a very common one, but t-shirts and things like that are often made of cotton, and that comes from the cotton plant. The rubber tree is actually used for making erasers. So the erasers that you use to rub out your pencil are actually made from a tree product. What about uses for plants in terms of food? So far we've seen that it can be used for a whole range of useful things, but what about using it as an actual food source? In case you weren't already convinced that plants are important, take a moment to think about this fact. Without plants, we would not have hamburgers, or pizza, or ice cream. None of these foods grow on trees, so how is that we rely on plants to provide them? Have a look at the image below. If we look at the hamburger case, the beef comes from the cow, but what does the cow eat? The cow eats the plants in the first place. So without those plants, we wouldn't have the hamburger. The ice cream follows the same process. Ice cream, we need cream and milk, which also comes from cows. And in pizza's case, the dough comes from the plant. We need that wheat in the first place to make the pizza dough. Plants that are grown in large quantities for food are called crops. The most common crops are sugarcane, corn, wheat, rice, and potatoes. The process of growing crops is called agriculture. So two important things here that you need to know. Agriculture is the process of growing crops, and a crop is a plant that's grown in large quantities for food. Fun fact, did you know that it takes between 4 and 20 kilograms of corn to produce 1 kilogram of beef? So if you're still not convinced that plants are the essential stuff for everything, ask yourself the question, could we live without plants?
Without our little green plant friends here, we just couldn't exist. If they all disappeared tomorrow, the world would come to a grinding halt. Plants are used in every aspect of our world every single day. And knowing how they can be useful is very important. Breathtaking, isn't it? When the first settlers arrived in Australia from England in 1788, they brought with them everything they thought they'd need, including all the plants and veggies from back home. But unfortunately, the conditions and the soils were so different to what they were used to, the crops failed and they almost starved. Meanwhile, the Aboriginal people had been living successfully off the same land. The difference being that they knew their native plants. They'd built up a great knowledge of the plants surrounding them, like these Warrigal greens, and it was this plant know-how that helped them to survive. Throughout history, we've been using the stems of the largest of all plants, trees. The stems, wood, is a great building material. It can be cut to shape and is light and strong enough to build ships to explore the world or to construct houses for shelter. It can be processed to make paper and even burnt to keep us nice and warm and cosy. And speaking of keeping warm, without plants, what would we wear? Well, forget t-shirts and jeans because cotton comes from a cotton plant. And no woolly socks because sheep feed on grass. And no gumboots because rubber comes from a rubber tree. So, good old plastic bags. Because plastic's got nothing to do with plants, right? Plastic? No, plastic comes from oil, doesn't it? Oil is what's left of ancient dead plant material that's been compressed over millions of years. We make plastic from that oil. In fact, the petrol for our cars comes from this oil as well. Our whole planet runs on out-of-date, squashed plant juice. Many important medicines are drawn from plants. Herbs have always helped cure sickness. The willow tree gives us aspirin. Penicillin mold helps us fight infections, and extracts from the opium poppy help us control pain. But wait, there's more. We haven't even looked at food yet. We eat an incredible range of plant parts. Leaves, roots, stems, flowers, seeds, fruits, and we make all kinds of different foods using plants from all over the world. Now, this may come as a bit of a shock to you, but food doesn't originally come from the supermarket. Oh, sure, you buy it there. But no, it's planted, grown and harvested on farms and in gardens. And without the knowledge that these farmers and gardeners have of the plants they grow and how to grow them, you and I could go very hungry. Well, we've proved that plants are useful, but apart from helping us to survive, they're also very beautiful and great for making things.
Have a look at this picture that you can see here, and I want you to make a list of 7 possible things that are stopping the plants from growing. So all across the picture there are various plants that are dying or dead, and I want you to write down 7 things that are stopping them from growing. So some of them are quite obvious, some of them maybe not so obvious. Come up with at least 7, discuss with someone nearby, and see what they came up with.